This video is demonstrating parts of the release and deployment handling workflow. This workflow is actually the most comprehensive workflow in the portfolio, and I will only take you through one test deployment. But as you can see, you have the opportunity to deploy and test software versions and hardware versions in the environment, in the test area, the S-test area, the A-test area, and the production area. So this is a very comprehensive workflow, but I will guide you through just deployment through the test area to see how it works. There are 4.5 roles in this particular workflow. This I will show you. There will only be 3.5, but 4.5 in total. There's the application or product manager. There's the release and deployment manager, the developer, and in some cases the actual operations or the person who will deploy the actual build. The half role will be the requester who will request this particular release. Let's see how this is done in reality. Being the requester, I will scroll down the workflow portfolio, and I will choose the release and deployment handling sample. So let's do so. And I'm introduced to a form where I'm capable of filling in a lot of information, but actually we only have to fill in 2 types of information to move on. The subjects new version of finance application, and I may have the opportunity to choose deployment start and end, but maybe I don't want to do this at this particular moment. So we'll just submit. And as I told you, there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of areas in which we may proceed to, but in this case we will just choose the test environment deployment. Having handed this release over to the application or project manager, we will take that role and we will look into our space, and here it is, new version of finance application. And as there is a blue pencil here, we are able to dive into the release and see what it's all about. At this stage we will just evaluate the content of the information, but we will also have, before we may proceed, we cannot proceed to any other stage at this moment, not before we have entered a deployment specifications and a start date and an end date. So let's do so. Start date, end date, and deployment description. So let's save these pieces of information. And now we are able to hand over this release to the release and deployment manager. So why not do so? that has been done now. So let's jump over to the Release and Deployment Manager role, who will look into the space. And here it is, new version of finance application. So let's dive into the release. And we only have to review whether the pieces of information are suitable or not. And we might enrich if necessary. But in this case, it's not necessary. So we will hand it back to the application manager or the project manager for further processing. So let's jump back to the application manager or project manager, and here it is. And we are now able to jump into the release. And now we have to enrich with some pieces of information. We must document the smoke or system test description, meaning how we intend to test this version. So let's save our information regarding this smoke test. And now we are ready to hand over this release to the actual developer, who will proceed from here. Now it's handed over to the developer. So let's jump over to the developer role and see if there's something here to deal with. And yes, the developer now sees that there is a release to process, and there is a blue pencil. So being the developer, we will now dive into the actual release, and we can see that we don't have to enrich anything. We might do it if it's suitable, but we don't have to. We can just start to deploy right away. But this time the release stays at the developer. So let's say that we have deployed the new version into the test environment. We are now ready to validate it. And again, when validated, we can proceed to the next stage. Let's press the blue one. And now, if we wish to proceed to another environment, because maybe we want to walk through the S-test environment, the A-test environment, and finally the production environment, we might want to do that. But in this particular case, we are happy now because we have validated the deployment and all is as it should be. So we actually may go down to the bottom of this form and just choose solved. As a developer, I'm happy. And now I'm able to get out of this workflow by pressing done and closing, and we don't have to walk through any further environments, because that was not the intention from the requester. So we will just press done and closing, and then after 2 weeks this release will automatically be finalized, or we may just finalize it right away if we wish to. So this was a walk through the actual release and deployment handling workflow.